For 13.3, we're actually preparing the journal entries to reflect the life cycle of the bonds. So this is the first part, module 13.1 and 13.2. We were talking about how to calculate all the pieces. Now we're just putting in the bond entries. The bond entries are very consistent. They don't change. It's just the amount that we're putting in that changes. So as we go through them, I again recommend that you use that bond cheat sheet so you can see them all and just refer to them as you're trying to make bond entries when you sell them at a premium or at a discount or just at par. So a basic bond that sells at par, which is the market rate, is exactly what the interest rate you're selling. They're paying 100% of what you ask, not more, not less. Is a simple entry, just cash $100,000 and record a liability to bonds payable for $100,000. T accounts, if you were to look at it, would be cash. We debited for $100,000, and we credited a bonds payable, a liability for $100,000. Oops. And on the balance sheet, it would just show up as bonds payable. We owe $110,000. If we sold a bond where the stated rate, my interest rate, was less than the market rate, or excuse me, my stated rate is bigger than the market rate. It's less than, greater than, it's always tripped me up since elementary school. So the stated rate is bigger than the market rate. You get cash for the full amount, the $104,000. Where is it? It says they sold it at 104.46%. So they sold $100,000 $1,000 bond. So $100,000 they sold at 104.46% equals out to, they got cash of $104,460. The bonds payable is still only $100,000, and the premium is the difference between the cash they got, the overpayment they got because people wanted to buy that bond. So $4,460. If you looked at that on the T accounts, they would have cash of $104,460. The bonds payable still of $100,000, and then the premium on the bonds payable $4,460, which we're going to stretch that out over the life of the bond and work it down to zero. So we have bonds payable, premium on bonds payable gives us a higher carrying book value, and we're going to reduce this carrying value until it matches $100,000 by the end of the loan. And then what if we are selling a bond that is less than the market rate? So if it's less than the market rate, we're gonna not get as much for it. So we're still selling $101,000 bonds. So our bonds payable is still $100,000, that hasn't changed. But the cash we received was less than the $100,000, so we got $91,800. So the difference between the two, the loss, was a discount of $8,200, which we're gonna stretch that loss, which will increase our insurance expense over the life of the bond. So showing you on the T accounts, we have $91,800 in cash that we got. Still have a bonds payable of $100,000, and discount on bonds payable is the difference between the two, $8,200. So when we look at it on the balance sheet, we have bonds payable of $100,000, discount on the bonds payable, so the loss we took, minus $8,200, gives us our carrying book value of $91,800. So as we're stretching the life of the loan, this $8,200, we're going to work to reduce it to get this $91,800 all the way up to $100,000. So the way we do it is we expense it out through interest, which makes our interest higher because we're not only paying our interest, but we're also trying to eat up this loss. And then we have interest paid out on the bond. So this is the same entry no matter what. If you sell the bond at a discount, at a premium, at par, exactly what you asked, it is always going to be interest expense and cash. So when you're paying the interest on a bond. So the only thing that you have to calculate is what the interest is. So the interest is principal times rate times time. So you have to pay attention on these ones because you can pay interest annually, semi-annually, quarterly. I believe you can even pay it monthly, but we don't have any problems like that. But we do have problems where we do each of those. Annually, quarterly, and monthly. Annually, semi-annually, and quarterly. So pay attention when you're calculating interest expense. that you're multiplying it by the correct time period. So interest is principal times rate times whatever the time period is. So pay attention to that. But other than that, it's just interest expense and a credit to cash. So now they are showing us what a bond is with, that we sold at a premium. So we're reducing this throughout the life of it, this 4,460. So our interest expense we calculate, and then we put we've done those amortization tables, so we're just actually plugging in these numbers right here, this premium on the bonds payable. So it doesn't go through the steps of where we came up to that, but this is what an entry looks like. And again, on the cheat sheet, I did lay that out, how that looks when you pay the interest expense on a bond that you sold at a premium. So I'd refer to that. Then you can kind of look at the differences between sold at a premium, sold at a discount. I think it helps a little bit when you can compare and contrast. So this, when we're selling that bond at a premium, we have the bonds payable, the bond premium, with our book value that's higher than what our bonds payable is. And as we're expensing out that interest that we're paying out every 6 months, every year, however the interest goes, it shows up as an expense, just like our utilities expense is an expense that shows up on our income statement. And this is where I was telling you we didn't have to actually calculate the numbers for the journal entries. By the time we're actually doing the journal entries, we've already built our little amortization schedule, and we're just plugging in the numbers. So you can see the interest expense was 4% times the total bond, and then the premium on bonds payable was the difference, which they took from right there and plugged up there. And you can just kind of follow the lines. So I recommend you study that as you go over the homework. I'm not going to read you everything. So I just wanted to pick up on some high points. So this is nice because it kind of goes through, kind of looks like my cheat sheet, although I think my cheat sheet is a little more basic in what it lays out on. But you have the balance sheet presentation in year 1 and year 2, and the income statement in year 1 and year 2. So you see what the bonds payable is versus the premium, which you see is going down because you're trying to work it down to 100,000. And then on the discount, you see the discount working and trying to get the this carrying book value to the bond payable of 100,000. So you're both working to try and get to 100,000, either bringing it down or bringing it up. Not going to do the sample problem as we do the homework. And then when we recall or we pay off the bonds, so when we issued a bond, it's cash to bonds payable. When we paid off, we just reverse it. Bonds payable and cash. So we took out a bond for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we have to pay them that $100,000. And it's just bonds payable, and we clean it out with a credit to cash.